We're live.
Great. Okay, Amanda.
Yes, sir.
All right. Good morning, everyone. It is just 9 a.m. So I'll call the Criminal Justice and Public Safety Committee meeting to order for March 22nd. First order of business is to approve the minutes of the prior meeting, which was February 22nd. Have a motion? Supervisor Conover, second Supervisor Smith. Any discussion or question on the prior minutes? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Is there any privilege of the floor? Any comments before we get to the agenda items? All right, seeing none, we'll move to the agenda. We've got 4 items on the first office will be the assigned counsel. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
Good. So the first item is a budget amendment to reallocate unspent grant funding to 2023.
That's correct. So there's been some money that we did not go through in 2022 that's already been allocated from state grant funds. This would just allow us to spend it this year. Yeah, I'm happy to field questions for it.
Okay, motion by Supervisor Conover, second Supervisor Smith. Any questions on this? Supervisor Leggett.
Yeah, just technical questions here. So these funds are already recognized in the revenue?
That's correct. So we could have spent them through 2022. However, though, there was a surplus, though there were still additional funds. And if the board votes to approve this, this will allow us to spend the grant money that's already been recognized in this coming year, or actually in this year.
Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, typically what happens at the end of the year is any expended dollars fall to the fund balance. And if that happens, they have to be reappropriated to the department so that they can expend them. It's not an automatic carryover from one budget year to the next. And that's why periodically you see that, particularly on grants that overlap our calendar, our budget year, that they will have to come in and get the appropriate authorization so that the treasurer's office can make the payment.
So I guess that's my question. Is this being appropriated out of unappropriated fund balance into that?
I don't believe so.
code?
Tammy, let's,
Sure, it's a budget amendment, so they're increasing both expenditures and the revenue codes by the same amount. So it's a zero-based effect to the budget.
And this will be a reimbursable, is that?
100% reimbursable. Yes.
Thank you.
any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Second item is to amend Resolution 76 of 2021, which authorized the contract with West Publishing to add a grant account code.
Yes, this is essentially, right now, we contract with West Publishing for legal research for certain of our panel members. It's 100% grant funded through the Pearl Herring grant funding every year. This is, as I understand it, this is what's before you is essentially just a specific line item or code item that's going to be created on a procedural mechanism. So there's really no difference in funding, no difference in fund allocation. This, I believe, will just allow the billing to be done easier.
Bring it to the floor.
Motion to move Supervisor Leggett, second Supervisor Driscoll. Any questions on this? Supervisor Leggett.
Why is something so simple before a committee and then from committee, doesn't it go to the full board? Can't this be done administratively? It's a subcode.
I would be
Good
happy
question.
with that. You get no objection from me, sir.
Tammy.
It was a request from the county auditor to add this account code to the resolutions, because when the resolution was originally written, this account code did not exist. It was in 2022 that we created all the sub-departments for both the assigned counsel.
Mr. Drossy, if this is just a matter of adding a budget code, that's all this changes. I can do this as a clerk's correction. This doesn't have to be a resolution.
Yeah.
All right, well, we have a motion second. Any further questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Third item is continuation of an agreement with Legal Aid Society for family court conflict cases.
Yes, so currently one of our providers for the family court cases is Legal Aid Society. We have several contracts with them. This one is for a dedicated attorney who takes on a certain caseload of our family court work, which we're in dire need of family court attorneys right now, more so than even criminal. This contract would be essentially a carryover, the same terms, same pricing as the prior one. I've already spoken with Legal Aid Society. They are on board with keeping the same terms, which is about given the inflationary environment we find ourselves in. So happy to answer questions on this.
Motion to move this. Supervisor Leggett, second. Supervisor Smith. Supervisor Leggett, question?
Thank you, Chairman. Lump sum amount to be determined, but there is a price sheet that goes with this. Isn't there already?
There is it, and the number for this year is escaping. It's the same as it was on the previous contract. I'd have to go look. Now, these funds are also covered under distribution and grant money. So the totality of this contract is paid for through the state, through one of the ILS, Indigent Legal Services distribution grants. There will be no additional cost to our taxpayers in this county.
Any other questions?
Will we know, will there be a number when this comes back up for further approval?
Yes, I can, and I can get that to the board within probably a week. Legal Aid Society's had a bit of a, they've similar to us, they've lost their administrator in the last few months also. So they've had a bit of turnover there as well. Figuring out who to deal with there has been a little bit of a challenge, would be a nice way to put it. But I'm pretty sure we've got the right person. They've committed now to at least the same terms previously. So I think we're back on track.
Supervisor Smith.
Maybe you haven't, I don't. Do we usually review that amendment before signature, or is this the only approval we do?
It'll, correct me, here, if we pass it, then it either goes off to the full board.
If this is just continuing the agreement, yes, it goes to the board.
Yeah, okay. So it shows up in that packet.
The actual amendment.
Any other questions?
Or the resolution to amend.
Okay, so the actual agreement, we don't see.
No.
On request, you can.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Carried. The last item is a continuation of an agreement with Rural Law Center appellate cases.
Thank you. So the Rural Law Center, currently, right now, all of our appeals are contracted out through the Rural Law Center. Ordinarily, on a criminal matter or family court matter at the trial level, we'll assign attorneys, or the public defender's office will, take the case. For appeals, because they tend to be expensive and it tends to be very difficult to find attorneys to cover appellate matters on an assigned basis, we've contracted out for a certain amount of appeals per year. This would be a continuation of that contract, which is set to expire at the end of next month. There's been back and forth discussion. Last year when we renewed, they tried to increase the prices on us. We were able to keep it for another year. I did speak with, and they have a new director as well there. It's been a year of turnover, I guess, everywhere. I spoke with their new director via email over the course of the week. She believes that they can maintain the same contract at the same terms right now. All I'm asking for is the board to approve the contract at the same terms right now. If they were, and to be quite frank, I'm going to use that as leverage. If they're going to try to come back at us with a higher number, I'm going to say, well, I'm going to have to go through the board again and everything else. So I'd much rather say, hey, listen, the board's approved it. Give me at least one more year at the same price, So to some degree, there's a little bit of gamesmanship here, I anticipate with the Rural Law Center. But what I'm trying to do is negotiate it so we at least keep the same price.
A motion first,
I have a question.
Supervisor Driscoll on a motion. Second, Supervisor Smith on the question. Supervisor McDevitt.
Would it make any sense to consider doing it totally in-house, the appeals?
So I thought it through. It's the typical lawyer answer, and I apologize for this. It depends. It really is a matter of how many appeals we're going to get in a year. It's the way the contract works. We get a set amount at a pretty good rate. And then once that basket tips, once we go over that amount, we do pay a good price for it. The problem is going to be if there is a significant amount of appellate work that comes out in a given year and we have to assign it out, it can get very expensive very quickly. Especially with some trial appeals, those will get to $20,000, $30,000. It won't take that long, especially reproduction costs. If it's a long record, photocopying, serving, blah, 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 blah. It's a risk. We looked at this about 3 years ago when Rural Law Center came up. I had discussions with Patricia Worth, who is now the head of ILS. At the time, she was, I think, the deputy director. And the economics really didn't work. Certainly it's something we can revisit right now. And if Rural Law Center were to start increasing our rates, it's something we would revisit. And that was part of the give and take last year when we were negotiating the contract. And I was able to get them to keep the same one. And is that, and thank you. Actually, I can now go back and say, like, our board is actually thinking about going in-house. We may drop the contract completely, give us the same terms. Personally, I do think that I don't think there's a lot of cost savings in it. And the other problem that you're going to run into is finding appellate attorneys is going to be very difficult. The third department, which is the department we're in, the panel is shrinking. I just know I used to be on the panel. I got myself off of it as well. A lot of attorneys are leaving the appellate panel because it doesn't pay a lot. And it's a lot of work for not a lot of money. So the assigned counsel panel there is shrunk. So I think what you're also going to see is the quality of representation decrease on the appellate level, just because there's less attorneys. So a lot of us are backed up, 8, 9 appeals backed up a year and a half sometimes. There's just not enough attorneys out there anymore. So what I would advise is at this point, let's ratify let's accept the contract on the same terms. If they try to come back and negotiate with me, I can bring all these issues to the forefront, and maybe it's just not worth their while to try and negotiate it. Maybe they just keep the same terms again for another year and we see where we are another year. And that's honestly what I'm hoping for.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. On an average, how many appeals do we usually have a year?
On family court and criminal, I believe last year was 19.
Okay.
We're not using our cap last year. 2 years ago, we went over our cap. I think we're capped at 25 on the appeals. And the problem is there's no way of knowing.
Right.
You know,
No, I was just
yeah.
trying to grab for an average there, not trying to pinpoint you.
And to get even more in the minutia, not to bore the committee, the other issue you run into, you basically have, in a very broad sense, 3 buckets of appeals. 1 is family court, 2 is criminal that goes to trial, and 3 is criminal on a plea. Criminal on a plea is quick and easy. I mean, I could do one of those in a few hours of my sleep. I've done so many in my own career, and I'm sure most appellate attorneys are like that as well. Trial, if it was a 2 or 3 week long trial, that appeal is going to take hundreds of hours to finally put together. Just putting together the records, probably 30 or 40 hours. That's where you're going to spend a lot of money. And then family court's a hodgepodge of whatever it is. So, yeah.
So a follow-up on that, can you not really say pick and choose, but can you pick and choose if we get to a factor where you might be going over, where you could, say, well, we could do this one in-house and or once we sign this contract, they get all appeals?
It is exclusive, yes.
All right.
With again, as a lawyer, there's always an exception to the rule, right? The exception to the rule on that is if the Rule of Law Center has its own, has a conflict of its own. So let's say there's another co-defendant, there's 2 co-defendants up on appeal, and they've represented one of them. They can't represent it that when it goes to a panel. And typically on those, that's when the costs will get expense. I know we had one about 2 or 3 years ago, I think, which cost 18, 19,000. It was a significant chunk. If I remember.
Thank you.
All right. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. I don't see any discussions items or anything else that you like?
Nothing else. I know the public defender's office is going to be discussing something in a little while with respect to software that we may be doing jointly. So if the state of the court, I apologize. If the board would allow me to reserve and possibly comment later on that, though, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it. All right, public defender's office. There was 2 action items listed, but I believe we're only going to move on one of them. The first one is a request to extend a contract for a case management system. Greg, you want to explain it to us?
Thank you, Chairman Garrity, Chairman Rossi, Administrator Taflin, honorable board members. The first request is to extend the contract for our case management system. And as the details reveal, this is really a post hoc contract covering last year up to this year. It has already been light itemed and approved. The lump sum of the contract is $5,500, $2,625 of which is borne by the county, the balance by ILS funding. And I would respectfully take any questions the board or committee may have
Thank you.
concerning that.
Accept the motion to move this first. Supervisor Leggett, second. Supervisor McGowan on the question. Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. On the resolution request form, is it correct down there on so paragraph F, commencement date of extension is 4/13/2022, or is it the 2020 2023, the extension.
It's from 2022 to 2023. So we'll probably be back up here next month looking for a amended contract. Probably be a 6-month request because we're also looking to transition into another software, which is part of our items that we're going to be discussing.
Okay, so that date is correct. This document that's included in our packet was though executed back a year ago.
Yeah, well, it wasn't executed. It has been performed, but we're looking for a formal approval of that. It's post dated, I guess. What we're looking for is an approval for the contract that's already been under terms. What you're probably wondering, why are you coming up here now to ask for approval of a contract that you've already obliged yourself to? And the answer to that is, I think the delay was caused by the transition in administrations. Our new public defender came in late May.
Uh-huh.
So that's what happened.
And he had a little catching up to do.
Correct.
Any other questions on this item? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. If I'm correct, the second request is actually moved to a discussion item instead of action for today.
Yeah, well, the second request has moved into the discussion, specifically discussion C, or rather discussion B, legal services. What I wanted to talk about, if we could move to discussion items, discussion item A, recruitment, vacant attorney positions, public defender, legal intern. This is going to address some of the Harrell Herring case ratios between attorney-client requirements in order to maintain Harrell Herring or ILS state funding. And I've asked our data officer, Harrell Herring data officer, to come here today to speak to you briefly, mindful of the time restrictions that you have, to give you some outline as to what our department is facing relative to this issue. So, Ms. Brothers.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I just want to give a really brief overview, and if you have any questions, obviously I can answer them. But the state funding we receive was created to provide time and resources to ensure adequate criminal defense representation. A statewide plan to implement both quality improvement and caseload reduction defines caseload standards as a maximum of 300 cases per attorney per year. A case for like a felony level is a little over 2.5. And then a misdemeanor and below is 1, just to kind of give you some idea of that 300. And again, that's a maximum number. With that being said, when we started with the ILS funding with Harrell Herring, the cases that we had basically outlined that we would need 12 full-time equivalent attorneys to cover the amount of cases that we get. So we've been, kind of going for that goal this entire time, trying to, get more attorneys, make sure that at the end of the funding, when year 5 was in place, that we would have 12 full-time equivalent. In 2021, that's the last year that reporting is completed for. Right now, we're getting into completing 2022 data, but in 2021, we had 8.3 full-time equivalent attorneys, which put our caseloads at 360 per attorney. Currently, we have 7.9. And that's just kind of giving you an overview of where we're at. We talked to ILS and Harrell Herring, they're great at working with us, trying to kind of develop ideas. But I just wanted to give you some numbers to show you where we are as we kind of go into the recruitment conversation. Does anybody have any questions? And that's the briefest overview I can give, I promise.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Aaron. We've heard the same pitch from other departments, certainly Sheriff's Department, Social Services. What's the worst case scenario of the consequences if you don't hit that threshold?
I asked that question yesterday, and they couldn't give me a clear answer. They said, we want to work with your county. We want to get you where you need to be. And I think that being said, they don't have one because we're still all in work this through together. what do we need to do? And I think we've come up with some good ideas and creative.
And there's one obvious consequence is that the cost is going to be shifted from the county to from the state to the county.
Sure.
Right, that's the most obvious thing.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so we want to get in good with them, you know, if at all possible.
Yeah.
Within our budget constraints. So, okay, good.
Hang on one second. Supervisor Leggett?
Yeah, do assigned council attorneys fall into those full-time equivalents?
Not for the numbers that I'm bringing to the table. I'm not sure how their numbers work for caseloads.
So unfortunately, there are no caseload standards for us. The problem, the distinction is that the Warren County Public Defender attorneys are exclusively Warren County. Our assigned council attorneys are on panels in Saratoga, in Essex, wherever else also. So tracking their hours and their caseloads becomes very difficult because each county has a different tracking system, right? So there's really no way of knowing what the caseloads are. And certainly, you know, none of our attorneys are, theirs are too. Again, it goes back to the same thing. I think, Greg, you said a couple of meetings ago, there just aren't enough attorneys anymore in the North Country to do our kind of work. There's less and less every day. Sorry, I didn't mean to take your floor there.
No, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this topic? Okay, thank you very much, Eric. Greg, you want to?
Some good news and some bad news that just recently came to light. Apparently, the state legislature put a halt to the governor's proposal to shift assigned council rates to the county, and that the state will now be bearing those costs. The bad news is if they increase those rates to what $165 an hour from what it is now, which is $65 an hour, it's going to be all the harder for the public defender's office to fully staff up and to meet those Hurrah herring ratios. So we're getting caught between a rock and a hard place here. All the while, both people are suffering labor shortages. Now, one of the items to discuss too is what are the ways we're trying to look at remedying this situation vis-a-vis recruiting. And we've been blessed to have the former superintendent of the state police come to us and to work with us, who has an enormous amount of experience in the recruiting tasks. And we've asked him to assist us in that specific endeavor to try to recruit attorneys so that we can be properly and fully staffed at the Warren County Public Defender's Office. I've asked him to come here today to not only briefly discuss what the efforts we're trying to make in that regard relative to the intern programs, but also while he's up here, I've asked him also to address another task we've charged him with, and that is to explore new and more efficient ways for both the Warren County Public Defender's Office and the assigned counsel office to share a software program to make both offices far more efficient in managing its caseload. So with that, I'll ask Mr. Kevin Ruin.
Good morning.
Morning.
As the issue on hiring is enterprise wide. It's not just enterprise wide in this state, it's across the country. You can't get people to take exams. It's true about hiring everywhere, and not just private and not just public employment, not just in the North Country, it's everywhere. There has been some shift. There's been some high level layoffs in tech companies, health companies, and health companies that overexpanded to meet the COVID change. So there's going to be some of that. But by and large, right now, I've not seen the hiring situation like this ever in 30 plus years of public service. You know, when I started working for the county, I reached out to Sterling Goodspeed and pitched myself, you know, I'd like to come work for you. That's now the whole dynamic has shifted. Spending money, particularly for advertising and recruitment efforts, I don't think is practical as a way of solving it here. Also, having spent money and done that, it's very difficult to track what landed, particularly with social media and kind of new advertising. They'll tell you, you know, levels of engagement, you know, the companies that you hire, but you don't know really what that means without doing onboarding interviews. Why did you come here? And once you've hired somebody, you're not really sure you're getting great answers anyway. So the simplest solution for us, and it was identified very quickly that this was a huge need. And I think it's probably true in every county department, which is your job, whatever it is your job. It's not to recruit. So you get so caught up in the day-to-day, try to stay above water in your business wise, you're not spending the time recruiting. The clearest and simplest solution is if you can identify a competitive advantage that you have versus other employers. And I think the clearest thing that we would have for this type of work, for public defender work, and even for the DA's office or even county attorneys, is if you can hire recent graduates pre-bar. That would be a way to establish you as different. That's something that a young person, you spend all that money for law school, you'd like to go into public service, but you'd like a job. And we've found a way. The county attorney really got back very quickly and outlined a process where we could do it. Now, the public defender's office and the county personnel people would have to be somewhat nimble and draft a item that says, hey, you're hired in this position, and pre-bar, you can do all these functions. Post-bar, you go into the full-time, full position. There's another piece to this, which leads ultimately into things like, can you do internal appeals? Can you do, what's your capacity level like? Is that you have to not only recruit, but it's develop and retain. So there's got to be a clear path. And here's the path where you move through. If you want to stay, you can vision yourself rising through the ranks as it were. And then also, hey, I'm going to develop as an attorney. I'm going to get this kind of level of experience that's different than, Dewey, Cheatham and Howe in New York City. I'm going to be in court. I'm going to have appellate opportunities. I may even have leadership, opportunities in the short term. So nothing I've said in terms of the difficulty recruiting is shocking anybody. The governor hinted at doing some on a grander scale when they talk about reevaluating the state workforce and that stuff. That's looking at those minimum qualifications, how they onboard people, how you get them in and how you move them through to make it easier to recruit people. That's really what that stuff is all about. The second thing, so we've got a plan to go forward and do that. We've got, people, we've gone to law schools and are bringing people in, experience the Warren County DA's office for a day. One of the young attorneys in the office likes to bring people to Lake George Court because he believes it's the best looking court in the county. So these kind of subtle kind of recruiting things, maybe not so subtle recruiting things. And so that's what we're doing, going directly to law schools, trying to talk to people who are going to graduate. We've put on job postings on kind of existing, alumni sites, and the rest of it, you're just not getting the hits on it. So I think that's their space that we can be competitive with. The other thing is looking at the PDCMS, which is that contract that was discussed. The actual technology, the written description of the technology would be, oh, this is going to meet all our needs. This is fantastic. But it's the computer equivalent of stone tablets and chisels right now. It's outdated. It's too difficult or too time consuming to use it. Basically, a formal list of the cases we have when they open and when they close. There's really nothing else that you can gain out of it. There's not a lot of input. So technology contracts are always very difficult. I've been aware of technology contract where the county is engaged. This is years ago, spent a lot of money, and it was literally the next day the company declared it, unsupported. So you've got to be really careful when you deal with contract with technology companies. You get the A team for the sales pitch, and then you get the B team to do the maintenance piece. Also, you've got to do a lot of evaluation, and we've evaluated a bunch of products, and there really only appears to be one that would do both. Most of the country's technology products on this score are designed for an entirely 18B style assigned counsel style program. Very few, only one, is designed for in-house case tracking, non-billing, which would be the public defender, and being used in New York. And it's that Legal Serve company. We've got a very nice relation. It's being used in New York City, New York County Public Defenders, but also being used upstate in Buffalo and Rochester. So it does appear that they've customized the product to make it work in New York, which would reduce our costs. So we go in, there's way less customization. So we're looking at that right now. I think we have to nail down procurement piece and how we do it and comply with all the rules. But this product seems to be the kind of thing that would address the internal PD, public defender piece, case tracking, conflict resolution, and the assigned counsel need, including a billing program. So it would be able to do all that stuff and then the ultimate reports that shoot out to the state to keep the grant funding going. All of that seems pretty good. And they're not, like I say, I can't identify another product around that's usable and do it. The other piece about that product is it can be used online and offline. We do a fair amount of work in courts where there's no phone signal, but much less a Wi-Fi. Now, maybe that's going to gradually change, but you may have to do your work in a rural place that's offline. Once you drive back into the coverage area, then the information would upload. Not a huge piece, but certainly way more usable, way more adaptable to us. That's not a concern in New York County as much as it is for us or Rochester, the Erie County Public Defender or the Monroe County Public Defender. So that's where we're at right now. Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
As it
Appreciate
stands
the-
now, when you walk into a court in Warren County, you'll see the probation department walk in with a laptop, and you'll see the district attorney's office walk in with a laptop. And they'll handle 30, 40 cases by pounding on a few keys. The Warren County Public Defender's Office walks into court with a box full of files, having to rifle through their files, having to go back to the office, make notes in their files. So basically, all we're seeking is to create some sort of parity with the other departments. The good news is we're trying to make sure that this funding is 100% borne by the state for these programs, which are very costly. And lastly, I would say, when you start talking about in-house appeals, I have wanted to and have inquired about it. I would love nothing more than once we get fully staffed to do in-house appeals. I think not only is it wonderful training for young lawyers, but it also goes to a lot of retention too. I've never felt more like a lawyer than after I get done arguing the case in the appellate division. And you're proud of your work, you've done your appeal, your legal research, and it really is, it's a wonderful experience for all young lawyers to engage in appeals, and drives me crazy to think that we farm out our appeals, but I guess we have to at this point. Hopefully there'll be a day when we can do our own appeals and save a bunch of money for the county by not paying some third party to do our appeals. That being said, thank you so much for your attention this morning.
All right.
And-
Supervisor Leggett.
Right, any discussion about the discussion item?
Go ahead.
Is that, does it need to go out to bid? What is the procurement to get legal server
I
selected?
think that's the question right now. Is it enough? Do we have enough information to justify a sole source?
Okay,
Or not? I stepped into this sort of doing it, on my own and evaluating products and calling around and asking people without really having the state procurement policy in my head. I wanted to find out, what was out there. I think this would justify a sole source, but I would need an expert and will answer questions. And I'm not even sure. I know how it's done at the state level. I'm not sure how we satisfy it here. I don't know if it's the controller or the county auditor or what, but I think this would do it. If not, we'll have to put it on RFP or RFIs or whatever they are. Go for it.
Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. Greg, I would respectfully say that it's not as much about keeping up with the Joneses as far as having the laptops. It's about the efficiency, because your performance certainly has an impact on the lives of individuals. So that's how I'm looking at it. It's help you do your job to the best of your abilities.
Very much agree with that.
County Administrator.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'll take it
with our procurement officer, Julie Butler. And I think that it sounds like something that would fit for a sole source.
It seems like it would, because it's so, it does all those things, keeps track of our caseload, their billing and caseload. And they can isolate it to make sure that, it's not like the DA and the sheriff where they can see, 99% of each other's stuff. This stuff has to be kind of isolated, and they have that capability.
Supervisor Smith, do you have a
Yeah,
question?
I just wonder if I could back up to the recruitment thing.
Yep.
One of the attachments was the writ of the state New York Court of Appeals. That seems to have, and maybe I'm wrong, to expire in August 2021. Is there an extension of this?
Yeah, I've looked at it. I think that's the same rules and they've extended it, but we're gonna go. They're written as clear as mud, and they've played with these over the years. When I was hired in the Brooklyn DA's office, it was a lot easier to do the student practice. It's still relatively easy for public defenders to do it, but you've got to hit certain rules, and they haven't done a big update recently. So I think it's the same rules, but we'll find out.
Our county attorney we've asked them to look into it. And they've come out with some pretty specific rules on student practices, certain qualifications that have to be met. And what qualifications would thereafter, like, let's say they fail the bar. What happens then?
Yeah.
And that's addressed too, the specific types of practice, how they have to practice under a practicing attorney who's been admitted for a certain amount of years. And if anybody wants any of these emails I got from the county attorney or contact the county attorney, I'm sure he'd forward them to you, or I would myself. So
Yeah, that's, I thought you all had that analysis by the county attorney, so it makes a lot more sense when you see it.
Any other questions, Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, we're struggling with issues with the labor force across the board. Today we're hearing about the difficulty in finding attorneys. We've had meetings on other issues related to CDL. The town's courts have sewer water filling operators, police departments, et cetera, that we're starting to see a big strain in finding people within our labor force. So it used to be that some of that we could get migrating from larger population areas, but those areas now are starting to struggle as well. So I applaud you for your proactive approach to try to secure early in the process, pre-bar, pre-whatever, students that's local that would like to work as they work part of their examination, as they work toward becoming a lawyer. And in fact, I think we use that to some success in our corporation counsel's office. I do believe.
I think that's right. I think that's right.
So. And while there were those that were somewhat critical of that at the time, many of us, the majority obviously, felt that kind of creative approach to what we need to do to. So, I think going forward, it's the challenge is going to be to maintain what we have, and the idea of expanding from 8 or 8.5 or 9 to 12 or 13 is quite a hill to climb, I think. But
It is, but we had 0 candidates when we started, and now we have 3. So that's a 300% increase.
that's progress.
If I can go off a little bit editorialized, I do think looking for those little things inside of each industry or job description, what's the competitive advantage you have versus another county or other place. I think the other thing is that it's lifestyle and the location, and it's similar to kind of the tourism component. I was joking with the public defender that he should be skiing on Gore Mountain, and as part of a video to recruit attorneys. I mean, it's the one thing we have. I don't think he needs to be encouraged to ski anymore, but what I'm saying is it's an obvious advantage that the county as an employer has versus other places. It's the most beautiful county in the state, and we should market it that way with the lifestyle opportunities. Obviously, appeals to people who hunt, fish, ski, bike, hike, and what have you. So I think that you ought to think about it in that way. It's to hesitate to push too much on that, because it's very difficult to measure success with that, you know, if all of a sudden you get a 300% increase, okay, you had success and you can see it. But I think you should, our employment generally ought to pitch that piece. Come here versus Syracuse.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, thank you. Do you also have an application in for the tourism director?
I have thought about it.
Just wondering.
All right, any other discussion? Thank you all very much for being here, all the information. We appreciate it. All right, next is the Office of Emergency Services. Our Director, Anne Marie Mason, is with us. There's 4 action items. Anne Marie, if I'm not mistaken, without objection of our committee members, items 1, 2, and 3 are all related
Yes.
and can be combined. First is to amend the table of organization to create the position of a office specialist part-time. The second is to transfer funds for that position. And the third is to actually fill the position.
Yes.
I reported that correctly?
Yes.
Okay, so you want to just give us the thumbnail of those 3?
Yeah, so we have a lot more work that we need to do within the office, and with some of the restructuring, we really need to have an office specialist position in the office. And I think filling it at a part-time rate for 24 hours a week would be sufficient enough to carry us through a normal work schedule.
Motion to move these 3 requests forward. Supervisor Driscoll. Second, Supervisor McGowan. Any additional question, discussion, Supervisor McGowan?
Yes, Anne Marie, is this been budgeted for?
It has not been budgeted for.
Ooh. Okay.
Supervisor Smith.
You're ready to laugh, all right? So I see the number 20,488, and attachment 2, I see the number 20,485.87. The delta of $2.12. So
No, it's serious. That throws everything
I'm
off.
telling you, I told you get ready to laugh, right? So I'm just trying to figure out where's that $2.12?
I am not really sure. I'd have to go and look and check the calculations out. Yes.
All right. There's my on the record thing for today. All right, thank you.
So we'll get that answer before it moves to the full board. Supervisor Leggett, do you have a question?
Thank you, Chairman Drossy, and I want to thank Director Mason for providing all of the breakdowns on where salary would be coming from. This is always good to see and the thought through it. You went through reorganization last year and we moved positions around, created new positions for existing people.
Right.
But now you're asking for more.
So what I'm asking for, prior to when I started with the county, there was a position for a person who handled taking care of our grant funds. That position no longer existed. So that position was kind of freed up. So that way there would be money available to continue someone on who would do training for the oncoming fire coordinator. And we never got that position back. So the responsibilities for that position have kind of been assumed by other people within the department. And it has created, it's additional work for them. And it definitely takes away from some of the other tasks that we need to get done.
Supervisor Leggett.
So Jen used to take care of the grants, correct?
Yes, but that was not necessarily part of her role in the office. The grants were done by the grant position that we had at the time. And when that position was removed, it kind of, like I said, the responsibilities for maintaining the grants were split up by almost 3 people within the department at that time.
Right, so you had a 3-person department. There was the director, the assistant director, and then the part-time person.
Right.
And taking care of all of that office. Now you have director, an assistant director, an office specialist. What's Jen's position now?
Jen's position now, she is an assistant emergency services coordinator.
Okay. And so
So she's going to be doing all of the grants now. The grants are not going to be split up over 3 people. She'll be monitoring all of the grants and taking care of the grant applications and the spending for the grants.
Okay,
And she will also be doing some of the planning and assisting with the 24 plans that the department's responsible for.
and no longer have time to take care of these other office.
Exactly.
specialties.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Conover.
Yeah, I think it's a modest investment in our emergency management office. The emergency we just went through is a great example of what we experience, the importance of timely and accurate information to be able to communicate that information to the people, the outreach to establish warming areas in the dead of winter. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on. The acquisition of bottled water in the event of water systems that break or become dysfunctional at all different times of the year, the ability to quickly and accurately access warehouse inventory, whether they be generator or other types of material during emergencies. I mean, when you're in the midst of an emergency, believe me when I tell you, it's like the cavalry coming and to help. And so I think it's a modest request at this moment in time. And just one other thing, I think I'm particularly pleased with the what I've been seeing out of the EMS office in terms of the internet site that you established and the potential linkages of that going forward. The really excellent communication in this last emergency with actual spreadsheets to show the municipalities, to show how many disruptions there were, what National Grid's response status was at that point. I'm taking really a lot of information and synthesizing it down and really taking it, in my opinion, and of course, they're always one phone call away for many of us during those emergencies. So I support the request.
Any other questions or discussion? Supervisor Leggett?
So it goes back to the funding of the position. What's the plan for funding?
So we're going to hope that we would be able to secure it from the unappropriated fund balance.
Nothing from grants, nothing from other cost savings.
Not at this point.
County Administrator.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, this would all have to come out of fund balance.
All right, we have a motion second to move this to full board. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, thank you. The last item for request is a resolution to appoint members of the Warren County Fire Advisory Board for the term May 1st, 23 through April 30th, 24. And there's an attachment with all the names. I believe there's 21 names listed here. Anna Marie?
Yes. So every year we reappoint the members again. Our fire coordinator does reach out to the fire departments to find out, do you want to remain on the committee if there's anybody new? So that outreach is done as well. And then he compiles the list and we bring it forward for approval.
And it appears as a good attempt to be equal distribution across the county.
Yes. Mhm.
Motion to move this forward. Supervisor Leggett, second. Supervisor Smith. Any further discussion, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thank you. I don't see any items listed for discussion. Anything else you want to bring to us?
Nope, I think that's it.
Okay, Supervisor Conover?
Yeah, just one other comment, that as we move toward, which I believe we will have to move toward a county or Park County EMS district as an example, we're going to need to have a capacity here at the county to be able to help us through that process and help us get to that point in time. And I think that the investment today and perhaps some future investments are really going to be needed to really help us get there. We have different parts to this, and at least here at the county, we can have one department that can help us help us pull this together to get to that end game. And
Good. Thank you, Emery. On behalf of all of us, I'm sure I can speak for the board too, with the recent snowstorm, Supervisor Conover alluded to it. But thank you for all your work and the office work, and we extend our thanks to all emergency services, fire, EMS, sheriff's office, state police. It was an incredible day or two that we had, and then you all managed it extremely well for the protection of all of our residents.
We can't do it without each other. It's truly a team effort to take care of what we do. So definitely appreciate everybody's help.
Good. Thank you for being with us.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate that. All right, our Director of Probation is here. We have one request that appears to apply for classification funding from the New York State Division of Criminal Justice Services, the amount of $13,140. Rob?
Yes, good morning. That is a grant we get to do pre-trial. It's called 13A classification funding under the state. It's an application we've done for years. It's a funding stream we've had. It's not much money, but it supports the pre-trial operations we have in the department.
All right, motion moves. Supervisor McGowan, second. Supervisor Leggett. Any discussions, questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. We've got a couple of discussion items. The first one is to secure detention for the adolescent offender. We've been discussing this for some time. Go ahead.
We have, and this is just an update. We do have a adolescent offender in Oneida County Jail. He's currently there. He was in court last week. It's been adjourned till April 14th. There's negotiations going on. There's a legal process. So we're hoping that sooner than later that's wrapped up. So that's still out there. I would like to indicate that we have paid Oneida County Jail for the 2022 sum of a little over $110,000. Our Department of Social Services, which is the designated agency for detention in our county, has submitted the claims to the state. So that process is going on. And as soon as we get a figure for 2023, we will amend our what's called the Raise the Age plan and again submit those claims. So things are going as they're supposed to go, albeit a little bit slow on the state level, but we keep pushing them and looking to keep track of what they're doing so we can get reimbursed. It's 100% reimbursable. We want to get reimbursed as soon as possible. So we keep on them in many avenues. So we'll continue to do that with respect to that. And again, I leave that on for a discussion item. It's slowed down a little bit, which is good. So hopefully, we'll manage it through the year.
Good, thank you. Any questions on this? All right, the second discussion item is a reference to the garden project in conjunction with the Warren County Soil and Water Conservation District and the DPW.
Yeah, so I'm going to have my juvenile probation supervisor, Amy Secor, come up here in a second and talk about that. But just a couple of comments on our part. The interesting thing in the county is when we look to do something different, when we reach out to the majority of our county partners, like water, the soil and water conservation and DPW and buildings and grounds, they can't be any more help. They're willing to do anything. So that's great. It's, what can we do? We have money. We're willing to help you out. So, I just want to say that the cooperation, and I've talked about the sheriff's department with our juvenile issues and adult work. The cooperation we get when we reach out is fantastic. So I think that's important. And the other thing, the garden project, and Amy can get more into it. These are kind of things we do outside the box in the traditional work we do. There's research based in it. Not that we just want to do a garden. Obviously, that has its benefits, but we're looking to do different things to engage our youth. And the engagement of youth is the most important thing we can do. And that's what we're missing as a society when we see the violence, when we see truancy, when we see all that stuff. It's a lack of engagement. So what we've taken up is attempting to do things different and engage our youth in out of the box type of things. And recently, I think we've had great success with some grant money where we work with Big Brothers and Big Sisters in our employment and training program with Liza to develop a mentorship. And it's got some press where we were able to get a couple of kids placed with community partners. And we have another group that's going to be graduating next week. So hopefully there's some more good stories to come out of that. So Amy, if you'd like to come up and talk a little bit more about the science and the logic and what we're doing, that'd be great. Thank you.
So thank you. It's good to be back in front of the committee.
I guess for what, two months in a row now. I have to thank Director UC because he gives me the good, happy stuff to talk about. It's a lot better than asking for money to pay for detention, I have to say. As you're aware, the probation department, it strives to identify service gaps and areas of need for our Warren County youth. We are continuously brainstorming in our department and researching evidence-supported interventions that are proven to address the risk and need areas for youth, but that also are unique to Warren County. So some of the things that we looked at is we have high-risk youth that come into the juvenile justice system that have serious mental illness, that have been chronically neglected or abused in the past, that have a history of post-traumatic stress disorder, that also, contributes to stress levels, or they may be diagnosed with ADHD or a learning disability where they can't concentrate without, certain skills or certain behavioral interventions. Now, gardening has been proven to reduce stress, to help regulate self-regulate mood, and to stabilize mental health issues. So what we're looking at here is to work with soil and water and buildings and ground. Actually, Zach Ruland has helped us in some of the planning, and we're meeting today to create a garden where my probation officers can work with the youth to build this garden, to plant seeds, to invest their time, hands-on interaction, and hopefully produce some vegetables and perhaps some flowers if we get time to it, that can be utilized for their own nutrition and their homes, or donate it to, we are thinking possibly to Wait House, the homeless shelter, the Warren Center, and or Open Door, because we think that at the point where we have vegetables, we're going to allow our youth to make that decision, and to kind of do a democracy of where they feel that it would be needed. So we have a lot of research that this sort of intervention can work. We're always trying to look at different ways because we have so many different youth and different ages that come into our system, and how to provide meaningful services to them. We have been blessed because we have probation officers that want to do this work, that feel like this is the way to rehabilitation and this is the future for probation work. And, it really resonated with me last month when Jason came up here, Jason Carasone, the district attorney, and said how valuable it is to have an employee like Matt Buren to work for you. Someone who is going to do the right thing regardless of the situation. They're going to make great decisions. And I really feel like we have officers that are invested in that. And I also feel like we have community partners that are invested in that as well. So we really have been blessed to have those programs. John Lehman also helped link me to Soil and Water. And when I talked to Jim, I think it's Lieberman, he really gave me a vast education on things that we could do. And he had a whole bunch of different ideas on how we can work with kids, not just on this garden, but in the future. So they've offered us at least $800, just gifted that to us to make this project work. And they have also said that they're willing to invest and help us build in other projects. So I'm glad that I can share that good news with you guys and kind of give you background to that.
Thank you, Supervisor Driscoll.
Thank you, Chairman. Amy, I'm as excited, I think, as you folks are. I've recently read some reports and even seen something on television that also points out that these types of opportunities create teamwork skills, goal setting, because you can see oftentimes see the end product of your labors. All kinds of interpersonal skill building, and it's fun. I think we should be looking at more types of opportunities related to. You're not going to hit 100%, but if you hit above 50, you're really making an impact.
Supervisor McDevitt.
I love the idea. I love the whole thought process here. Who would have ever thought that mental health and gardening could somehow be tied together? But it is a creative approach to kids that are at risk, and thank you for putting together potentially a program that hopefully will have some good results.
Thank you.
Supervisor McGowan.
Yes, Amy, you reached out to me to kind of throw it out there, and I was just so excited to hear it. I think it's a great program. I remember, not that I was a major problem child, if any of you want to believe that, but down the street from me in Clifton Park, there was a farmer. And my mother talked to this farmer, and we went and he gave us a little section, and I did that for a couple summers. I didn't really enjoy it, but no, I did because it was work, but I had to go alone. But as a group setting and everything, I think it's a great opportunity for everyone to be involved in this. And I was wondering, can we move this coming into the spring right now? This is the time. Is there any chance we can move that up into an action agenda if the board feels so? So we can get the ball rolling and have everything lined up. So once the snow and the frost is gone, which might be pretty quick from what I hear.
Well, do you need that at this point?
I think we're prepared to go. I think with respect to water and soil, they're going to provide, not only are they going to provide the funding, they're going to purchase what we need and things like that. So we don't need to amend the budget. We don't need to transfer any money. They've been fantastic partners. So they're ready to go. They said we're going to be meeting with an individual today to start planning the project. So I don't think we need anything more. We're ready to go.
Green light for me.
Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. Where's this going to be, and do you need deer fence?
We do need a deer fence. We're actually, today we're going to plan out a location. We believe it's going to be where Zach started the flower garden out in the back field, which would be really nice because people could come and see it. We have some other locations possibly, but we think that's probably our best bet.
Do we have a water line out there?
We don't have a working water line, but we do have some ideas for irrigation. Buildings and grounds that they would help us with that, as well as soil and water is going to look into that.
And Zach's a great guy to work with.
He absolutely has been nothing but 100% on top of this. And, really receptive to the idea of working with our juveniles. So we're grateful for that. I think it's really going to open some opportunities for our kids for conservation and to learning some skills in that area as well. So we couldn't be more thrilled. We think it's one of those projects that if it takes, will be sustainable for a very long time.
Terrific. Supervisor Smith.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Beth. Go ahead first.
Just one more thing. You talked about probation officers working out there. Some of it would be after hours or on weekends. And last month we came with a rural justice grant where we looked to put overtime money in the budget, and this will help with the same. So kind of working out what's going to go hand in hand. So it's we're expecting them to do more, and we're going to be compensated as grant money, no cost to the county.
Thank you, Supervisor Smith.
Yeah, I'm going to throw my head in with Supervisor McGowan. I mean, I think we should take this as quickly as we can, because again, I grew up the grandson of a farmer. I'm on board with Supervisor McGowan. I was surprised to see this mental health for me, kind of the opposite effect, working in a garden for 18 years in the summer. But it might be a country mouse, city mouse thing. But yeah, because right now we're coming on the end of March. If we were going to start seeds, a lot of that should have already been started inside, especially for like tomatoes and things like that. So I don't know how far, and we got a short growing season up here. So as far as vegetables goes, yeah, I probably want to get that going as soon as we can.
We have a plan for that. We have already started some seedlings, and then we're going to bring them in. We're going to also do some things. We're going to use those beautiful windows that we have downstairs that get all the sun. So we're going to utilize those probably next week to start our seeds. So the rest of our seedlings.
Terrific. Well, you have our complete support. And it looks like Supervisor McGowan offered to carry water back there too.
Stop, you know, do a little.
Where was that in the resolution?
All right, thank you all for being, Supervisor Thomas, you have a question?
I think this is a great idea, and just for future reference, Soil and Water has money from the Part C money that we get from the state. It's for community projects, and it's capped at $1,000, so if you know, if here's another project or something, and we funded it at that level, the money's there, and we're Part C money is based on the efforts of the board of directors and going to meeting.
Good. Terrific. Bob, before the probation director leaves, let me just acknowledge him. I recently attended a New York State Association of Counties meeting, the Public Safety Committee meeting, and our probation director was asked to speak on a pretty significant issue, and he represented Warren County. Actually, he represented all probation directors across the state, but in particular, he represented Warren County, an extreme professional matter. Not that we be surprised by that, but I think it's the right thing to acknowledge you and the work that you're doing on behalf of us and across the state. Thank you very much. Okay, good. All right, last up is the sheriff's agenda for today. There is, I believe, 7 items for consideration. First one is to amend the county budget in the amount of $38,261 to account for 2 Zurich American Insurance Company recovery checks. Sheriff?
Yes, these were 2 vehicles that were total losses as a result of a collision. We've received the checks. We're just looking to amend the budget.
Okay, motion to move this forward. Supervisor Smith, second. Supervisor Leggett. Any questions or discussion? Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you. As we were going through insurance for the county last year, claims always comes into part, and the more claims we have, the more we pay and whatnot. Was this one incident or were 2 different incidences with 2 different officers, I'm assuming, in 2 different locations?
Yes.
Okay. Does that happen often?
Any accident is far too much, you know, and these were not personal injury. It's something that we're on the roads all the time. We're out in the worst of conditions. We're getting to people, you know, during times of crisis. So we're trying to move through intersections and roadways. You know, I think for the volume of calls that we handle, the number of accidents that we have are really low. And I think the majority, if you review them throughout the year, involve an animal, a deer, you know, crossing into a highway, that type of a collision.
So I may add on, last Tuesday, as I was driving roads around town, I was behind a sheriff office vehicle that was also checking roads, and the cars do pretty well in snow. I must admit, they made it through. It was an unplowed road. You could see where the bottom of the car actually shaved off the top layers of the snow. So good to see that we have cars that do work well in those adverse conditions.
Thanks to all of you.
I'm glad they cut a path for you.
Okay, there was a motion second. Everyone in favor?
No,
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. The second item is to enter into intermunicipal agreement with the town of Bolton to install a radio tower and accessory building on the town of Bolton property.
Can we combine this with the next?
Yes,
one
we
too?
can. The next one is to enter an municipal agreement with the town of Chester to install a radio tower and accessory building on the town of Chester property. Sure.
These are projects that we've been working towards for some time. I'd like to say that we'll get them done this year. I'm not sure. I think the APA will have a lot to say with that. But one will be located on the Chester Fire District property, the other on Bolton DPW property. 60-foot towers, approximately estimated around $250,000. I think it's going to be closer to $300,000. It's fully grant funded. And this is similar to the Stony Creek Tower project. It's just an intermunicipal agreement that would allow us to establish these towers on both sites.
Supervisor Leggett, second. Supervisor Smith. Any further questions or discussion? Supervisor Leggett.
So how long did it take to do the one in Stony Creek?
Way too long. It from the prior administration came into my administration, and I was there when it was erected. It was pretty impressive, but that was several years.
Yeah, about 3 years.
Yeah.
So we're hopeful that it will not be Mark Neal. Let me assure you of that will slow this project down. It will be the APA or other, setbacks. I know that equipment is challenging getting the certain supplies and parts in for this. There's a backlog like anything else. That's why I say I'd like to say we'd get it done this year. I don't see that happening, but we're going to get it done as quickly as possible. I know, speaking to Mark, it will greatly improve the radio, fire, EMS, police coverage in all of those areas.
All right, sorry, County Attorney's Office.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to add that at the County Attorney's Office, we've already been speaking with Mark Neal and putting together a couple of drafts of agreements already to be presented to the town and also for the Chester Fire District. And I did want to just clarify and appreciate some input from Supervisor Leggett on this as well, that the property in Chester is actually owned by the Chestertown Fire District and not the town. That 5885 Route 8 is actually owned by the fire district. So our contract that the county has would actually be with the fire district and not the town, I believe, unless there is some of it that's going to be built on town property.
It would be fire district.
It'd be fire the district.
All right, we have a motion and second to move items 2 and 3. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Item 4 is the request to transfer funds within the sheriff's office budget to provide funding for unexpected expenditures. Sheriff?
Just to step back one, the agenda has it listed incorrectly just for Mr. Terwilliger. But the request form has it with the contract with the town of Chester Fire District. So I don't think there need to be any revision going forward to the full board. I believe that the undersheriff may have spoken with Tammy, and as would be expected, we have a 20-year-old facility and we're going to have things that we don't account for. The uninterruptible power supply system, which activates lighting and backup power when we have a failure in our building, went down. It's original to the sheriff's office. The expense to replace that is $55,000. We also had a washer, an industrial washer that's 20 years old in corrections. This is our second that we've had to replace. So we were really working hard to try to find the money. It's roughly $70,000 just for these two items within our budget. And we were planning on making a request to move it out of salaries. And I believe that the request will actually be from contingency, because working with Rob Lynch, these were not planned, budgeted for items. It is an emergency expense. And I think his recommendation would be to take the money from contingency.
Okay. Motion moves forward. Supervisor Driscoll, second. Supervisor Leggett. Any further questions or discussion? Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Chairman. Sheriff, I appreciate you looking salaries and others within your budget there. It's always the best way to go. As talking with the assistant administrator here, that it does seem to be inappropriate for the contingency because it's capital costs for one, and it's totally unexpected. So,
Any other questions, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Carried. Fifth item is to enter.
Should we put contingency in that, or was that included?
It's gonna be referred to finance, and the finance committee actually makes the determination of whether it'll come from contingent or the unappropriated.
Okay. Good luck with that.
Yeah.
Fifth item is to enter into an agreement for Ethernet and fiber service.
This, I mentioned Mark Neal a lot. I'd like to share before we actually talk about this. This covers all of our Ethernet and fiber service, which we have a tremendous amount. Each of the tower sites, all of our facilities, both the main station and substation, utilize fiber. And Mark didn't have to do this, but he is saving us just through interactions with First Light, $24,600 a year. He worked with them. We had 3 agreements previously. He's reduced it down to 2 agreements and really held their feet to the fire to shave down the annual cost. So this would just be an annual contract with them for the expenditure of $1,840 a month for everything.
Motion to move this forward. Supervisor Leggett, second. Supervisor McGowan, any discussion?
Just to
Supervisor.
note that First Light is a new service provider. They just ran all the way up through the county. It comes through Warrensburg, Lake George, Warrensburg, and Chester off into Essex, and is available for municipalities and businesses. And I'm glad to see that they're providing some good competition.
Yes.
For our costs.
Needed.
Yeah.
needed competition.
Good. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. 6, request is to amend the agreement with Lexipol to provide for additional annual subscriptions in the Police One Academy. Sheriff?
This is an online training service we've been using. We've had great success with it. We would just like to add 22 more users to this program. And the increase is just $1,166,000 annually for this year and for next. And we have that within our training budget.
Motion moving forward. Supervisor McGowan, second Supervisor Smith. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Last request items to amend the county budget to transfer $8,000 from 22 fiscal year to 23 in the same account. Sure.
The code for the other share of state aid has a number of different grant funding within it, and some goes to salaries for traffic initiatives. There was $8,000 that remained last year that needs to be used for a Governor's Traffic Safety Committee conference this year. And we're just asking to move that money forward into 2023 so we can pay for the conference.
Motion to move forward. Supervisor McGowan, second Supervisor Smith. Any questions, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Sheriff, do you have any discussion items for us?
I do not.
Any questions for the sheriff? Supervisor McDevitt?
I just, this morning's Post-Star talked about school resource officers in Warrensburg. That seems to have taken a little bit of time to get that done. So is that moving along and you feel happy with
I can't speak for Warrensburg, the residents and the school board, the superintendent. And I know going back to 2019, I met with the superintendent. They had an appetite for a school resource officer program. We worked into an agreement, we prepared to move forward. The school board of education structure changed and they decided they no longer wish to have a school resource officer. My position is I'm not going to try to force them or entice them to enter into this program. They allowed me to come speak with the board this week. All I did was share some information, answer some questions, but the conversations are really one-sided. You speak and then they say thank you and you walk off. I'm not going to commit for them. I think it is definitely moving forward. We will be very purposeful in any assignments that we make in Warrensburg, knowing that everyone's going to be watching and this really needs to be a successful program. I explained to them very clearly what our expectations are for a school resource officer and that they are the only school now currently, with the exception of St. Mary's, in Warren County that does not have the program. The only con for them, if there is a con, is an expense. And I know that school budgets are tight. And when you're talking about cutting educators, having, to fund police is something that I think some parents and faculty might not be on board with. But, if they would like us to be there, we're going to be there. We'll provide an exceptional service. And if they do not, then we will not. But they have not committed yet.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right, privilege of the floor. Any other comments from our committee members? Anyone else in attendance? Seeing none, accept the motion to adjourn. Supervisor McGowan, second Supervisor Leggett. Any question or discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all for being here. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman.